A storm of fate began with a single, desperate escape. A woman running from a life that no longer felt like her own stepped into the path of a man whose world was built on power, precision, and unshakable control. In the gleam of luxury and the echo of danger, two wounded hearts collided, carrying secrets neither dared to speak. One fled from a future she feared, the other faced a truth he never expected. And now, amid tension, desire, and unanswered questions, a choice must be made, one that will change everything. If you love stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep bringing these powerful romances to life. The world outside Stella Bennet's hotel window glittered with cold December lights, but none of that beauty touched the heaviness in her chest. Chicago had wrapped itself in winter, every rooftop crowned in white, every breath outside turning instantly to mist. Inside the grand suite where she stood alone, the warmth felt artificial, almost deceptive, like a stage light meant to flatter a bride who was not allowed to feel anything except gratitude. Her reflection stared back at her from the full-length mirror. The gown of her rehearsal evening hugged her body in perfect lines, a soft ivory that should have made her look radiant. Instead, Stella saw someone fading. Her eyes, once quick with laughter, looked dulled, as if her spirit had been carefully pressed beneath layers of expectation. Her chestnut hair was pinned into a polished chignon, but a loose strand brushed her cheek, trembling with every shaky breath. She inhaled, slow and careful, hoping it would settle the unease inside her. It did not. A faint murmur of voices reached her from the hallway, and she recognized her fiancé's tone instantly. Grant Mercer was speaking to a cluster of guests, his voice carrying that perfect blend of warmth and authority that made people adore him without question. The kind of voice that could sell a future, even if that future was a polished cage. Stella turned away from the mirror, pressing a hand to her stomach where fear tightened like a knot. She had only meant to grab her clutch from Grant's briefcase, something he often insisted on carrying. Her fingers brushed against a stack of crisp documents she had never seen before. At first she skimmed casually, thinking they were guest lists or vendor contracts, but then her eyes froze on the words post-nuptial guardianship recommendation, asset consolidation, medical authority in the event of instability. The word felt like ice water down her spine. She read it again, slower this time, as if that would change anything. Instead, the meaning sharpened. This was not a wedding. It was preparation for ownership. Her pulse hammered. She shut the briefcase gently, as if closing the lid could keep the truth contained. Her hands were trembling when she backed away, breath catching in her throat. She needed to think. She needed air. She needed someone to look her in the eyes and tell her she was not imagining the slow tightening of a trap. But there was no one. Outside the suite, Grant's laughter echoed down the hall. He was telling a story, likely charming a group of donors. He was always charming. His charm was a weapon polished to a shine, one he used with precision. She had learned that charm did not mean kindness. It meant control dressed as affection. Her chest tightened so sharply she pressed a hand over her heart. A knock on the suite door made her jump. A hotel attendant's voice came through the wood. "Miss Bennet, Mr. Mercer asked if you are ready." Ready. The word tasted bitter. She whispered, barely audible, "I can't breathe." The walls felt too close. The dress felt too fitted. Even her thoughts felt constrained, like someone else had decided what she was allowed to think. She walked backward until she hit the edge of the vanity table. Her reflection stared back at her again, but now she saw not a bride. She saw a woman suffocating under the weight of a future she had not chosen. A decision rose inside her with terrifying clarity. She grabbed the thin coat she had left on a chair, pulling it around her shoulders. It was not made for winter, certainly not a Chicago winter, where the wind sliced through fabric like a knife. But she could not stay. She could not stay one more minute. Stella opened the side door of the suite, the one that led to a lesser-used hallway, and stepped into the emptiness. The air smelled faintly of cleaning products and cold ventilation. She followed the corridor, passing framed photographs of the city in sepia tones, her heels clicking too loudly on the carpet. She felt every heartbeat in her throat. By the time the elevator doors closed around her, she could barely swallow. When the lobby lights welcomed her, she kept her gaze low, her steps fast. She passed clusters of guests in shimmering winter attire. She passed hotel staff who nodded politely. She passed the grand decorated tree with silver ribbons twisting like frozen memories. Outside, the cold struck instantly. The wind snapped at her coat, slicing through it straight to her skin. She gasped, her breath turning into mist, but she kept walking. She would freeze before she went back. The city loomed around her in steel and brightness, but every shadow felt like Grant's gaze, waiting to reclaim her. A security guard glanced her way, but she walked past him, down the stairs, into the underground garage, where the air was dim and heavy. The parking level hummed with faint engine sounds. She turned blindly, her shoes tapping against concrete. And then she saw it. A sleek, black Lamborghini, its surface gleaming even in the dull lighting. The driver's door was slightly ajar, as though someone had stepped away for a moment. Warm air drifted faintly from inside. She hesitated only long enough to hear her own heartbeat. Then she opened the door and slipped inside. Warmth wrapped around her instantly. The leather smelled like quiet luxury, like a world she didn't belong to. She pulled the door softly until it clicked. Her breath trembled. She curled her legs slightly, pulling her coat around her shoulders. She whispered to herself, just a moment, just one moment to breathe. But the moment vanished when the driver's seat shifted. The door on the other side opened, and a man slid inside with fluid confidence. He did not look at her immediately. He thumbed the ignition, sending a deep purr through the engine. Then he turned. His eyes met hers. The world stopped. Asher Whittaker's presence filled the car like a quiet storm. He was older than her by a few years, perhaps in his late 30s, with an air of tailored composure. His dark hair was meticulously styled, his jaw strong, his gaze sharp enough to cut through panic. He wore a winter coat over a fitted suit, and he radiated a calm so intense it felt like a command. He took her in, her trembling hands, her smudged makeup, her torn dress hem hidden under the coat. His brow tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're freezing," he said softly. Stella swallowed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I just needed... I'll leave, I promise." She reached for the handle. It didn't open, not because it was locked against her, but because his hand rose slowly, palm open, not touching the door, just asking her to pause. "You're afraid," Asher said, his voice low and steady. "Who are you running from?" Her breath caught. No one had asked her that. No one had looked at her like that, as though her fear mattered. She shook her head. "Please, I just need to get away." "So, get away," he said calmly, "but not alone." Her eyes filled with tears she refused to release. Asher took a breath, then reached for the gear shift with decisive ease. "I am not taking you back to him," he said, "whoever he is." She stared at him, her heart beating painfully fast. "You don't even know me." He looked directly into her eyes, and something softened in his expression. "You don't hide in a stranger's car unless you're desperate," he said, "and desperation deserves safety, not judgment." Her lips parted, she could not speak. The Lamborghini eased out of the parking space, lights reflecting off the glossy hood like scattered stars. Stella clutched her coat, feeling warmth spread through her chest for the first time in hours. Asher drove with a steady calm, never glancing at her except in soft flickers, as though he did not want to overwhelm her. His presence felt like a fortress built of silence and intention. After a long pause, he said gently, "I'm Asher." She exhaled shakily. Stella. Asher nodded once, as though committing her name to something unspoken. "You're safe with me, Stella," he murmured. "I'll make sure of it." The city lights blurred beyond the windshield, and Stella closed her eyes, letting herself believe the words just long enough to breathe again. Morning crept into the secure floor of the hotel with the gentleness of a whisper, soft and pale against the tall windows. Stella Bennet sat curled on the edge of a deep blue sofa, wrapped in a thick cream-colored blanket borrowed from the suite. Her hair, once pinned with precision, now fell in loose waves around her shoulders. The softness of it framed her face with an innocence that contrasted painfully with the storm she carried inside. She looked toward the tall window, breath fogging the glass faintly. The city below shimmered under a cold winter sun, the skyscrapers standing like silent sentinels. Chicago looked peaceful from above, but inside her chest, nothing was quiet. Every inhale came with the memory of the documents she had found, each line of legal manipulation echoing like a warning bell. Every exhale trembled with the fear she still could not swallow. Behind her, the sound of footsteps approached, unhurried yet purposeful. Asher Whitaker entered the room with the understated authority of a man who did not need to raise his voice to command attention. He held 2 cups of coffee, steam rising from each one in swirling ribbons. His suit jacket hung open over a dark sweater, and the faint shadow on his jaw suggested he had slept as little as she had. His presence filled the space, not with coldness, but with a steady warmth she had not expected from a stranger. He paused near her, studying her face with quiet intensity. "You did not sleep," he said softly. Stella shook her head. "I kept thinking someone would come for me." "No one will enter this floor without my permission," Asher assured her. His voice was low, smooth as silk, but anchored in certainty. She accepted the cup he offered, her cold fingers brushing briefly against his warm ones. Even that light contact sent a shiver through her. He noticed. His eyes lowered to her hands. "You are still shaking," he murmured. "Drink. It will help." She obeyed, taking a slow sip. The warmth spread through her like a gentle tide, but her heart remained restless. "Asher." She hesitated, searching his face. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." He took a seat beside her, not too close, but close enough that she felt the shift in the air. His gaze settled on her with an honesty that left her unguarded. "Because you looked afraid," he said simply, "and you should never face fear alone." The words sank into her like balm, softening something she had not realized was clenched so tightly within her. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She did not want to break again. Asher watched her carefully. He seemed to sense the moment her breath wavered. He leaned forward slightly. "Stella, you do not need to pretend strength with me." She swallowed. "I do not know how to be anything else anymore." A soft knock interrupted the intimacy of the moment. Asher rose instantly, his posture shifting into one of controlled vigilance. He opened the door just enough to speak to someone outside. "Send her in," he instructed. A woman entered, elegant in a tailored coat and carrying a leather case. Her dark hair, streaked with dignified silver, was tied back neatly. Her presence radiated competence. Stella straightened, clutching the blanket tighter. "Asher," the woman greeted, "you called for me." "This is Mariah Klein," Asher said, introducing her with a gesture. "A private attorney, trustworthy, discreet." Mariah offered Stella a gentle, reassuring smile. "Good morning. I understand this is a difficult situation." Stella nodded, her throat tight. "If you are comfortable," Mariah continued, "I would like to understand what happened." For a moment, Stella could not speak. Then she reached for her phone, the one thing she had grabbed in her escape, and unlocked it with trembling fingers. She handed it to Mariah. "There are documents," Stella murmured. "Legal papers. They were prepared before the wedding." I found them in Grant's briefcase. Maria opened the files Stella indicated. Asher returned to sit beside Stella, and his presence steadied her again. She felt the warmth of him, the quiet reassurance radiating from the way he sat. Poised, attentive, protective. Maria read quickly, her expression tightening as she scrolled. "These are post-nuptial guardianship motions," she said. "They suggest concern regarding your emotional stability. And here," her voice darkened, "there are clauses giving your fiancé complete control over your finances and medical decisions." Stella's breath faltered. Hearing it aloud made everything feel painfully real. "Is this legal?" Stella asked, voice breaking. "Not without your consent," Maria said firmly, "but once signed, it could be used against you, and your fiancé prepared them before the ceremony. That alone is highly concerning." Stella pressed a hand to her forehead. "I should have known. I should have left sooner." "You left," Asher said. His voice was calm, but carried a force of conviction. "That is what matters." Maria looked between them. "There is more. Shortly after you went missing, your fiancé submitted a wellness inquiry. He claims you may be experiencing confusion and emotional instability." Stella froze. "He is trying to make me look unwell." "He is building a narrative," Maria confirmed, "one designed to discredit you before you can speak." Asher's jaw tightened. He leaned forward. "Maria, what can be done?" "For now," she said, "we secure Stella. We gather every piece of evidence she has. We prepare a protective countermeasure. But she must remain somewhere her fiancé cannot reach." Stella's pulse spiked. She turned to Asher, fear shimmering in her gaze. "He will come here. He will find me." "No," Asher said, "he will not." She believed him. She wished she did not, because trusting him felt like stepping off a precipice she did not yet understand. Maria continued her analysis, tapping gently on the screen. "This message thread between a private investigator and Grant is particularly alarming. He refers to you as a delicate matter requiring containment." Stella exhaled shakily, fighting a fresh wave of dread. Maria closed the files and looked at her with firm kindness. "Stella, you acted wisely. Had you not left last night, these measures could have been used to isolate you legally." Stella did not realize her hands were shaking until Asher reached out, slowly, deliberately, stopping just short of touching her. He was asking permission with his eyes. She gave the faintest nod. His hand enclosed hers gently, grounding her with warmth and strength. "You are safe," he whispered. "Here with me, you are safe." Her eyes closed for a moment, not in weakness, but in relief. Maria rose. "I will begin the filings immediately. Stella, I will contact you again soon. For now, stay with Asher. He has the resources to protect you." Asher nodded once. "Thank you, Maria." When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed felt charged, intimate. Stella turned to Asher. "Your attorney says to stay with you, but I do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden," Asher said firmly. "You are someone who needs protection." "But protection comes at a price," she whispered. "I do not want you to pay for my mistakes." He stepped closer, his expression softening in a way that made her breath tremble. "Running from harm is not a mistake, and I will never regret helping you." She pressed a hand to her heart. "Why does it feel like I have known you longer than a few hours?" Asher's voice lowered, warm as velvet. "Because fear reveals truth quickly, Stella, and truth draws people together." He paused, his gaze moving to her lips before returning to her eyes. "Are you afraid of me?" "No," she whispered. "I am afraid of needing you." His breath caught subtly, the faintest crack in his composure. "Needing someone is not a weakness." "It feels like one," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Especially after everything." His hand rose again, slow enough to give her time to pull away. She did not. His fingertips brushed her cheek, a tender, barely there touch. "You do not need to be strong with me," he murmured. The intimacy of the moment wrapped around them like a quiet, fragile warmth. Stella felt every beat of her heart echo through her body, but then she pulled back slightly, blinking away the emotion gathering in her eyes. "I cannot hide. I need to do something." "You will," he said, "but not alone. Not today." She looked toward the city through the window. Her breath eased, though the tremor never fully left her. Suddenly, a soft chime sounded from the table nearby. Not a door, a phone. Asher retrieved it, his expression sharpening. He stepped aside, answering in a low voice. "Yes." A pause. His brow tightened. "I understand. Keep me updated." Stella raised her head. "Is something wrong?" Asher looked at her for several long seconds, weighing what to say. When he approached her again, his voice was gentle. "Your fiancé has begun calling the hotel," he said carefully, "claiming he is worried. He is asking if you checked in. He is insisting you may need help." Her breath caught painfully. "Help," she repeated bitterly. "He will not find you," Asher assured her again. His voice deepened, carrying a promise she felt in her bones. "But Stella, this makes staying here necessary." "And the cost?" she asked softly. He took a slow breath, then sat beside her again, their knees almost touching. "The cost is that we work together," he said. "Openly, strategically. I cannot protect you if you do not tell me what you feel, what you fear, what you want." Her eyes shimmered. "What I want is to breathe without trembling, to exist without permission, to feel like my life belongs to me again." He raised a hand, brushing her hair behind her ear with reverent care. "Then that is what we work toward." Her heart thudded once, deeply, painfully. "What do you want, Asher?" she whispered, unable to stop herself. His gaze locked with hers, molten and steady. "I want you to stop looking over your shoulder," he said softly. "I want you to feel safe in your own skin. And I want—" His voice grew even quieter, intimate and restrained. "I want you to know that you are not alone." Her breath faltered at the sincerity in his tone. "Asher," she whispered, "you barely know me." He smiled faintly, his eyes tracing her face with exquisite tenderness. "I know enough to care." Emotion surged through her, warm and terrifying. He leaned in. Not to kiss her, not yet, but to bring his forehead close to hers, his voice a murmur. "Stella, we will face whatever comes next. But for now, sit with me. Let your heart rest." She closed her eyes, letting her forehead brush his. It was the softest touch, but it lit a spark inside her chest that refused to dim. Her voice trembled. "Just for a moment." His whisper answered, deep and steady. "For as long as you need." And in that quiet, shared breath, the price of disappearing no longer felt like loss. It felt impossibly like the beginning of something that her heart had not dared to name. The afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of the secure suite, casting a soft golden glow across the room. Stella Bennet stood near the glass, her fingers lightly touching the smooth surface as she looked down at the vast city below. Chicago sprawled out with a quiet majesty, wrapped in winter frost, every rooftop glistening as though dusted with powdered diamonds. Yet she felt suspended between worlds, as if she were watching life happen from behind a veil she could not yet lift. Behind her, she sensed Asher Whitaker long before he spoke. His presence always moved through the room like a slow tide, steady and inevitable. He approached with a calm that warmed the air around him, carrying with him a quiet authority that made Stella straighten her shoulders without thinking. "Stella," he said gently. She turned, her eyes meeting his. The moment their gazes locked, something tightened low in her chest. His dark eyes held a softness that surprised her every time, a depth she had not expected from a man whose life existed within headlines and curated perfection. "Yes," she answered, her voice low, careful. He stepped closer, not invading her space but grounding it. Mariah called. She secured the basics for your protection for the moment, but this situation, it requires strategy. Stella inhaled deeply, gripping the edge of the window ledge to steady herself. Strategy, she repeated. Meaning what exactly? His eyes softened. He was choosing his words with care. Meaning visibility, he said. Meaning that, for a short time, you stand beside me publicly so no one can claim you were taken, coerced, or unstable. Her breath caught. She tightened her hold on the ledge. Stand beside you. Publicly? As what? Asher hesitated, then took another step closer, his voice lowering into something intimate, almost tender. As someone working with me for the weekend, as a guest under my care. People will assume what they wish, but the truth will belong to you. She swallowed. As a shield. As protection, he corrected softly. A shield hides. You are not meant to hide. Her chest trembled. And if people misunderstand, they will, he said with soft certainty. People misunderstand even when given the truth, but they will not be able to erase your voice, and they will not be able to reach you. She turned back to the window, unable to hold his gaze. The idea of walking into a room filled with eyes and whispers terrified her, but the thought of returning to silence terrified her more. Her voice came out small. I do not want to owe you anything. You will not owe me, Asher said gently. This is an agreement, a partnership. She looked up at him again, startled by the word. Partnership. He nodded. You make choices. I offer support. Nothing more. For a moment, Stella could not breathe. Partnership. No one in her life had ever offered her that. Not truly. She exhaled shakily. All right, she whispered. Tell me what I need to do. His expression softened into something almost reverent. You need to let me take care of the logistics, he said, and you need to breathe. Her lips curved faintly at that. Breathing seems to be the hardest part. He stepped closer again, the distance between them narrowing until she felt the heat radiating from his body. Then let me help with that, he murmured. Her eyes widened. How? He reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she did not, he lightly placed his fingertips beneath her chin, lifting it gently so their eyes aligned. She felt the brush of his touch echo through her entire body, soft and warm, like a caress she had never known she needed. Look at me, he whispered. She did. You are safe, he said, each word deliberately slow. And you are capable, and you are about to walk into a room where people will see you, but none of them will know you the way you're standing in front of me right now. Her breath trembled again. Asher. He withdrew his hand slowly, though his gaze remained on hers, tender and unwavering. Let us prepare, he said softly. You deserve to enter that room with your head high. Stella nodded, though her heart beat wildly. What do I wear? She asked, attempting a steady voice. Asher studied her for a moment, then said quietly, Something that reminds you of who you are, not who they want you to be. Later, with the help of one of Asher's discreet staff members, Stella stood before a wardrobe in the guest room. Nothing extravagant, nothing loud, everything elegant and impeccably tailored. She chose a winter outfit that felt like a rebirth. A soft cream sweater beneath a fitted camel-colored coat, dark trousers and ankle boots that clicked confidently on the floor. Simple gold earrings completed the look. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone she recognized, someone she missed. She stepped out of the room, smoothing her coat nervously. Asher was waiting in the main suite. The moment he saw her, he fell utterly still. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit with an ebony coat. The combination sharpened his silhouette, making him look like a figure carved from winter and dignity. But when his gaze landed on Stella, the edges softened. He approached slowly, each step deliberate, as though unwilling to startle her. You look, He tried again, voice quieter. "Stella, you look like the world belongs to you." A soft laugh escaped her, fragile but real. "I do not know if I feel that way." "You will," he said, "and until you do, I will stand beside you." She felt her heartbeat stumble. "Asher," she whispered, "you are making this harder." He tilted his head, a faint smile touching his lips. "Harder? Because you make me feel—" She stopped, cheeks warming. "Different." He moved closer, stopping only when he stood an arm's length away. "I feel it too." The admission hung in the air like a suspended breath. Stella looked up at him, eyes wide. "Then why do you speak so calmly?" "Because if I am not calm," he murmured, "I might forget that this moment belongs to you, not to me." Her breath shivered at the tender restraint in his words. He offered his hand, palm open. "Shall we?" She hesitated only a second before placing her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, gently, securely. The contact sent warmth spiraling up her arm. They moved together toward the private elevator that would take them to the ballroom level of the hotel. Asher's security team stood waiting, unobtrusive yet alert. The elevator doors closed. Stella felt the space tighten. It was not claustrophobia. It was awareness. Quiet, powerful, overwhelming. Asher stood beside her, their hands still intertwined. His thumb brushed her knuckles in a barely there caress that made her breath catch. "You are trembling," he whispered. "I know," she admitted. "I do not want to be watched." "You will not be alone," he promised. "Every eye that falls on you will also fall on me." She looked up at him. "That is the part I do not understand." "What part?" "Why you are doing this," she whispered. His gaze dropped to her lips before rising again to her eyes. "Because when I found you in that car, Stella, something in your eyes, it refused to let me walk away." Her breath faltered. The elevator chimed softly. The doors opened. The world beyond gleamed with chandeliers and gentle music, the kind of luxury Chicago flaunted effortlessly during gala season. Staff in crisp uniforms moved with precision. Guests in elegant evening wear floated across polished floors, laughter and murmurs blending into a soft hum. Stella froze. Asher stepped closer, his voice a warm murmur. One breath. She inhaled. Now another. She exhaled. He touched her elbow lightly, guiding her forward without forcing her. They walked together, their steps matching instinctively. People turned to look, curiosity flickering, but Asher's presence beside her became a barrier, a shield of quiet strength. A woman nearby whispered something to her companion. A man paused mid-sentence, his gaze trailing after them. Stella felt the weight of every eye, but she also felt Asher's hand, firm against the small of her back, subtle and protective. He leaned toward her. "You are doing well." "How can you tell?" she whispered. "Because your chin is lifted." She forced a small smile. "Is that good?" "It is beautiful," he said, and she felt her cheeks warm. They greeted a few guests with nods and polite smiles. Asher guided her through the crowd with gentle assurance, introducing her with deliberate simplicity. "This is Stella Bennett," he said. "She's assisting me for the weekend." He never added explanations, never embellished, never allowed anyone to question her presence. His confidence wrapped around her like a shield. After a while, the noise blurred, and Stella found herself in a quieter corridor where the lights dimmed softly against the cool marble floor. She leaned against the wall, exhaling in relief. Asher followed, stopping a step away. "You did it," he murmured. "I survived," she corrected with a faint, shaky laugh. "You did more than survive," his voice lowered. "You shined." She met his eyes, startled by the sincerity she found there. "I would not have made it without you." I only walked beside you, he said. The strength was yours. She shook her head slightly, emotion building in her chest. Asher, I do not know how to feel when you look at me like that. How do I look at you? His voice was silk wrapped around fire. Like you see me, she whispered. All of me. His breath deepened. For a moment the world shrank to the space between them, charged with longing neither dared confess aloud. He lifted his hand, tracing the air near her cheek, but not touching. Stella. Her lips parted. May I? He whispered. She nodded, a barely there movement fragile as a heartbeat. His fingertips brushed her cheek in the gentlest caress, soft and reverent. She leaned into the touch without meaning to, her eyes fluttering closed as warmth spread through her. His thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone, lingering just long enough to make her breath tremble. When she opened her eyes, his face was inches from hers. Asher, she breathed. His voice was a whisper against the delicate silence. You make this difficult. Why? She whispered back. Because every moment with you feels like a choice I want to make again, he murmured. Her heart thudded in response. He stepped back slowly, as though releasing her was an act of restraint, not distance. His eyes lingered on her lips before lifting to her gaze once more. We should return to the ballroom, he said softly. She nodded, steadying herself. But as they walked back into the warm glow of the gala, Stella felt something shift inside her, something fragile and new, something she had not allowed herself to feel in a very long time. She felt her heart begin to trust the possibility of a world where she was not silenced, and the man walking beside her made that possibility feel dangerously, beautifully real. The ballroom glowed beneath the shimmer of crystal chandeliers, every facet reflecting golden light over velvet drapes and polished marble floors. A soft, instrumental melody floated through the room, lending an air of elegance that blended perfectly with the murmurs of Chicago's elite. Stella Bennet felt the hum of that world beneath her feet, yet she remained slightly apart from it, as though her heart were beating to a rhythm that had nothing to do with the carefully orchestrated event. Asher Whitaker stood beside her, striking in his charcoal suit, a presence both commanding and unexpectedly warm. Every time he looked at her, Stella felt a trembling awareness coil low in her chest, a gentle but undeniable pull that made her breath falter. His quiet confidence steadied her, even as the gaze of the crowd weighed on her shoulders. She offered polite smiles to curious guests, answered simple greetings, and held herself with a grace she had not realized she still possessed. But Asher saw what others did not. He noticed every flicker of hesitation, every subtle shift of her fingers, and each time he moved closer, his hand brushing the small of her back, discreet and protective. "You are doing beautifully," he murmured near her ear, his voice low enough that only she could hear. The warmth of his breath made her spine tingle. "I feel like I'm standing in a spotlight," she whispered back. "You are," he said softly, "but you are not standing there alone." She looked up at him, her eyes searching. The way he gazed at her, steady, calm, deeply attentive, made something tender unfurl within her. She opened her lips to speak, but before she could gather the words, someone nearby gasped softly. "Asher!" a voice called with elegant familiarity. Stella's breath halted, because the voice did not belong to a stranger. Grant Mercer stepped into view with the confidence of a man who believed the world naturally opened its doors for him. He wore a flawless black tuxedo, tailored to perfection, and his smile was polished, pleasant, and utterly false. His blonde hair was neatly styled, his eyes sharp with calculation, even as he pretended warmth. Stella felt every muscle in her body tense. Grant's gaze slid over Asher first, assessing, measuring, then landed on her. His smile deepened, but the muscles around his eyes did not soften. It was the smile he used when he wanted people to believe he cared. "Stella," he said gently, as though tasting her name. "I have been worried sick." Her throat tightened. She took a step back on instinct, but Eyre subtly moved with her, blocking any attempt Grant might make to approach too closely. Grant's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly at the motion. "Stella," he repeated, his tone taking on a faint note of chastising concern. "Why did you leave without telling anyone? You know you can talk to me." The words sliced through her, disguised as tenderness but carrying the threat she had felt for months. Eyre's voice cut through the tension, smooth but edged with steel. "She does not owe you an explanation." Grant turned to Eyre with a polite but icy expression. "I'm speaking to my fiancée." Stella swallowed hard. "I left," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "That is all you need to know." Grant looked at her with an expression that would fool anyone else, kindness mixed with concern. "Stella, sweetheart, you are confused. We can resolve all of this quietly. Let us go somewhere private and talk." "No," Stella said, her voice strengthening. "I do not want to go anywhere with you." A flicker of frustration cracked through Grant's controlled facade, only for a second, but it was enough for Eyre to see it, enough for Stella to recognize the danger she had sensed for so long. Grant took a slow breath and shifted his tone again. "Let us not make a scene," he said gently. "People are watching. You know how misunderstandings spread." Stella's heart pounded, but she stood firm. "I am not confused," she said. "I am safe." Grant's jaw tightened. "Safe," he repeated. "With him." Eyre stepped forward just enough to position himself fully at Stella's side. "With me," he said with quiet authority, "and with herself." Grant's gaze darkened. "You have no idea what you are involving yourself in," he said to Eyre, his voice lower now, laced with menace beneath its polite veneer. Eyre did not flinch. "I know exactly what I am doing." Silence clung to the air between them, tense and brittle. Then Grant smiled again, the expression a near-perfect reconstruction of charm. "Eyre Whittaker," he said lightly, "the Dubai Maharaja in the flesh." He looked around pointedly at the nearby guests who were trying not to stare. "Quite a headline, if the right person snapped a photo. I imagine you must be very careful about the company you keep." Eyre's shoulders tensed subtly, but only Stella felt the shift through their closeness. Grant continued, his tone syrupy. "It would be a shame if regulators or investors began to wonder about your judgment, especially now. It would take only one rumor to cast doubt." Stella's breath cracked inward. She felt her stomach twist with guilt, even though she had done nothing wrong. Eyre's voice dropped to something so quiet it felt like a dark promise. "Do not speak as though threats sound like advice." Grant tilted his head. "Threats? Dear Eyre, I am offering perspective." His gaze moved to Stella. "Sweetheart, please. You know this is all a misunderstanding. You have always been emotional in moments like these." Stella's chest flared with anger. "Do not call me sweetheart," she whispered. Grant blinked, surprised by her tone. "Stella, you are upset. It is all right. I forgive you." The words hit her like a blow, as if her pain were an inconvenience to be patched over with patronizing affection. A soft tremor ran through her body. Eyre saw it. He turned fully toward her, blocking Grant from her view, and lowered his voice with exquisite tenderness. "Breathe," he whispered. "Just breathe with me." Her gaze lifted to his. The ballroom blurred. For a moment she saw only him, his steady expression, the calm in his eyes, the patience in the way he waited for her breath to fall in sync with his. Grant's voice rose from behind, laced with irritation now. "Stella, stop this. You are embarrassing yourself." Stella straightened abruptly, stepping around Eyre, her fear giving way to a blooming strength. She looked Grant directly in the eyes. "I am not embarrassed," she said. "I am done." The silence that followed was thick and electric. Grant's smile faltered. "You do not mean that." "I do," she said simply. "Please leave." Grant's expression hardened, the friendly mask cracking entirely. "You are making a very serious mistake." Stella lifted her chin. The mistake was staying. Asher moved subtly beside her, not touching, but his presence was a wall at her back. She drew courage from it, her breath steady for the first time since Grant had appeared. Grant exhaled sharply, then gave Asher a cold, purposeful look. "You have no idea what she is capable of," he said. Asher met his gaze evenly. "What she is capable of is choosing her own life. Now go." For the first time, Grant seemed unsure. He looked between them, calculating something, then forced a thin, tight smile. "This is not finished," he murmured. He walked away with the same polished grace he had entered, but Stella could feel the anger radiating off him even as he disappeared into the crowd. The moment he was gone, Stella's body sagged slightly. Her breath shook, her heart racing beneath her coat. Asher placed a hand gently on her elbow. "Stella," he whispered, "look at me." She did. Her eyes were wide, brimming with emotion she could not contain. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I did not mean to cause a scene." "You did not cause anything," he said firmly. "You stood up for yourself. That is strength, not fault." Her gaze softened with vulnerability. "If you had not been here," he shook his head. "Do not finish that sentence." His eyes held hers with warm intensity. "I am here. That is what matters." She felt a wave of gratitude, fierce and overwhelming. "Thank you," she breathed. "Truly." Asher's hand lingered near hers, not holding it, but close enough that the heat of his skin made her stomach flutter. "I am proud of you," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "Proud?" "Yes." His voice deepened, rich and sincere. "You faced someone who has controlled you for far too long. You spoke your truth." Stella looked down, shy warmth rising in her cheeks. "I felt safer because of you." He closed the final distance between them, lifting her chin with a touch so delicate it made her heart ache. "And you will feel safe for as long as you stand beside me," he whispered. Her eyes shimmered. "Asher." He held her gaze, his thumb brushing her cheek lightly, his voice tender. "You did not break. You rose." The ballroom's light softened around them, the distant music swelling like a quiet blessing. Stella felt the air shift, charged and intimate, as if the world itself paused to witness the delicate moment unfolding. Asher's hand drifted lower, resting just above her waist, warm through the fabric of her coat. She felt the pressure of it everywhere in her body. Stella breathed. "You make me feel like I can breathe again." Asher's voice was velvet. "Then breathe with me." She did, each inhale and exhale syncing with his until her heartbeat slowed and the tremor in her chest softened. When she looked up again, her face was inches from his. His gaze dipped to her lips. For one suspended moment, the world held its breath. Then Asher blinked slowly, a soft exhale escaping him as he stepped back. "Not here," he murmured. Her heart fluttered wildly, but she smiled gently, grateful for his restraint, for the depth of feeling behind it. "Asher," she whispered, "thank you." He extended his hand, palm up, offering, not demanding. "Stay close to me." She placed her hand in his, and as they walked through the ballroom once more, Stella realized something had shifted forever. Her past no longer held all the power. Her fear no longer dictated her steps, and the man beside her had become something she had not dared believe she could find again. A safe place, a spark of hope, a beginning she had never expected. The night had settled over Chicago like a heavy velvet curtain, muffling the sounds of the city and drawing the lights into soft halos against the winter haze. In the secure suite high above the streets, Stella Bennet sat curled in an armchair near the window. her knees drawn close, her fingers wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea that had long since cooled. The glass before her shimmered with the reflection of skyscrapers, but her gaze was distant, lost somewhere between fear and dawning resolve. Behind her, the soft hum of a nearby floor lamp cast a golden warmth across the room. It was the only light she allowed. The darkness made her feel unseen, hidden, safe, yet the silence felt fragile, as though it could shatter with a single breath. When the door to the suite opened, Stella did not turn. She sensed him instantly, the subtle shift in the air whenever Asher Whittaker entered a room. His presence did not announce itself with noise, but with gravity. A pull she felt deep within her. "Stella," he said softly. She looked back over her shoulder. Asher stood just inside the room, balancing strength and concern in every line of his posture. His coat was gone, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal the tension in his forearms, and there was a faint crease between his brows that had not been there earlier. She set the cup aside and straightened. What happened? His steps were unhurried as he approached, but the seriousness in his eyes made her chest tighten. He lowered himself onto the sofa opposite her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Mariah called," he said. "Grant has escalated." The words settled like cold rain on her skin. "What did he do?" she whispered. Asher held her gaze for a long moment before answering. "He has filed a claim stating that you left with items of significant value from the penthouse. He is accusing you of theft." Stella's breath caught. "What items?" "I took nothing." "He did not specify," Asher replied. "He does not need to. The accusation alone is damaging." Her hands curled into fists. "He is trying to paint me as unstable, irresponsible, capable of anything." Asher's voice lowered. "He is trying to trap you." She swallowed hard, her eyes stinging. "He will twist everything. He always has." Asher moved to the chair beside hers, closing the distance with purpose, but not force. He reached out slowly, placing his hand near hers, his fingers brushing lightly against her knuckles. The contact was warm, grounding, tender. "You are not alone in this," he murmured. Her lips trembled. "I feel like I am drowning." He shifted closer, cupping her hand gently. "Then hold on to me." Her breath hitched, and she looked down, overwhelmed by the depth in his voice. Their fingers intertwined almost naturally, as if the motion had been waiting for them both. Asher continued in a softer tone, "There is more." The words made her lift her gaze. "Mariah recovered a message exchange," he said carefully, "between Grant and one of his legal contacts." Stella felt her pulse begin to race. "What does it say?" Instead of answering immediately, Asher pulled out his phone, opened the screen, and handed it to her. She took it with trembling fingers. The message thread appeared, cold and damning. Grant had written that he intended to pursue a wellness evaluation to ensure that Stella could be guided properly into their marriage. He had suggested that containment might be necessary if she proved resistant. Stella felt the air leave her body in a sharp, painful exhale. "Containment," she whispered, shaking her head. "He wanted to lock me away, make me look unfit, make me doubt myself." Asher's hand tightened around hers. He wanted control, nothing more. Her vision blurred with tears she tried to suppress. How could I not have seen this? How did I let myself get so close to someone who could do this to me? "Because you trusted," Asher said softly. "And trust is not a flaw." She blinked, tears trailing down her cheeks. Asher reached up slowly, cupping her face with one hand, his thumb brushing the tear with a tenderness that unraveled her. "You are stronger than you think," he said in a whisper that coaxed her heart to steady. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I do not feel strong." Strength is not loud, he murmured. It is quiet, steady, the kind that keeps you standing when the world tries to break you. Her breath trembled, and she felt his fingers slide slightly into her hair, stroking gently. "Asher," she whispered, opening her eyes, "what if I cannot win this?" "You do not have to win," he said. "You simply have to speak the truth. The truth is enough." Her lips parted, emotions swelling inside her like a rising tide. Before she could respond, the suite's door clicked again, and Dana, Asher's head of security, stepped inside. "Mr. Whittaker," she said with calm urgency, "you need to see this." Asher rose without letting go of Stella's hand, guiding her gently to stand beside him. Dana handed him a tablet. On the screen was a rapid stream of online posts, comments, and headlines. One of them read, "Runaway bride seen with billionaire Asher Whittaker. Is she emotionally stable?" Another read, "Friends claim Stella Bennett has been acting erratically." Stella felt the blood drain from her face. "No," she whispered. "No, he did not." Dana nodded solemnly. "Grant's team is pushing a narrative. Social media is picking up speed." Stella stepped back, her breath growing shallow. "He is destroying me." Asher turned to her, his expression fierce with protectiveness. "He is trying to, but he will not succeed." "How do you know?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Because I am here," he said simply. "Because you are not fighting this alone. Because you have truth on your side. Because your voice is stronger than his lies." She pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to steady her breathing. "Every person he knows will speak in his favor. He has influence, connections. People owe him favors." "Stella," Asher said firmly, lifting her chin with gentle fingers. "Look at me." She met his gaze reluctantly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "His influence does not change who you are," Asher said, "and it does not change what he has done." She exhaled shakily. "I feel like I'm watching my life slip away." He stepped closer, his expression softening. "Then take it back. Right here. Right now." Her lips parted, trembling. "I do not know how." He bent slightly, his forehead almost touching hers, his voice deep and intimate. "You begin by believing that you deserve better than fear." Stella's tears fell again, silent and warm. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I know." His thumb brushed her cheek once more. "And I am here. Every step." A soft knock at the door drew their attention. Mariah entered quietly, carrying her briefcase. Her eyes softened when she saw Stella's tear-streaked face. "Stella," she said gently, "I have more information." Stella straightened, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Asher remained beside her, a steady presence. Mariah opened her case and pulled out a printed report. "Your fiancé's foundation is tied to a series of questionable transactions," she said. "Nothing proven illegal, not yet. But it suggests financial manipulation, possibly laundering." Stella's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means you were not simply a bride," Mariah said softly. "You were leverage." Stella closed her eyes, a wave of nausea sweeping through her. "I feel sick." Asher placed a hand on her back, warm and steady. She leaned into the touch instinctively. Mariah continued, "The marriage would have granted him access to your inheritance, your assets, and your name. If anyone questioned the transactions, he could shift blame or mask them behind your accounts." A sharp ache spread across Stella's chest. "I cannot believe I trusted him." Mariah placed a comforting hand on Stella's arm. "You were manipulated. Carefully, systematically. No one sees clearly when love is used as a weapon." Stella nodded slowly, tears welling again, though she blinked them away. Asher stepped closer, his voice rich with emotion. "You are here now," he said, "and you will not face this alone." She looked up at him with eyes full of vulnerability. "You keep saying that," she whispered. "I do not know why." His hand cupped her cheek again, tender and reverent. "Because it is true." Her breath trembled in the space between them. For a moment, neither spoke. The room held its breath, wrapped in thick silence and unspoken desire. Then Stella stepped back slightly, trying to gather herself. "What do we do now?" she asked Mariah. Mariah closed her case. "For now, Stella, we prepare your statement. We build your evidence. We remain calm and precise, but you must rest. You cannot fight on empty." Stella nodded. Mariah turned to Asher. "Keep her here, keep her safe. I will return in the morning." After she left, Dana followed quietly, leaving Stella and Asher alone in the warm glow of the suite. The silence settled around them like a soft blanket, intimate and heavy. Stella sank back into the armchair. "I do not know how to breathe without feeling watched," she whispered. Asher approached slowly, lowering himself to one knee beside her, bringing their faces close. "Then breathe with me," he said softly. She exhaled, her breath trembling. "Again," he whispered. She inhaled, feeling his presence steady her, anchor her. When she opened her eyes, he was watching her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "Asher," she murmured, "you do not know what you are getting into." He smiled faintly, the expression soft and devastatingly sincere. "Stella, I know exactly what I am choosing." Her heart pounded. "What are you choosing?" she whispered. His gaze deepened, warm and unguarded. "You." Stella felt the breath leave her lungs. Asher rose slowly, taking her hand and guiding her to stand. Their bodies were close enough that she felt the heat of him, the steady rhythm of his breath. He brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek with fingertips that lingered just a heartbeat too long. "You deserve to be seen," he whispered, "to be believed, to be free." Her lips trembled. "And you make me feel all of that." He leaned in, his forehead touching hers, his voice barely above a breath. "Good." She closed her eyes, feeling the moment cradle her heart in its warmth. The trap around her had tightened. The truth had been laid bare. But in Asher's arms, Stella felt something she had not felt in far too long. Strength, safety, and the quiet beginning of a love she never dared to imagine. Chicago descended into a winter storm by late afternoon, the kind that swallowed streets and softened the sharp edges of the city beneath thick layers of white. Every gust of wind pressed against the tall glass windows of the secure suite, whispering warnings, tugging at shadows, drawing the world inward. Inside, the warm glow of the lamps offered sanctuary, but Stella Bennet felt a tension in the air that even the softest light could not ease. She stood near the window, watching the snow spiral through the darkness like falling stars. Her breath fogged the glass as she leaned closer. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside her, pressing against the fragile places she had tried so hard to hold together. The accusations, the online gossip, the manipulation threaded beneath every word from Grant Mercer's orbit. Each had taken from her, stripped pieces from her, until she barely recognized her own reflection. The faint click of a door drew her attention. She turned, and there he was. Asher Whitaker entered the suite with the heavy quiet of a man, carrying too many thoughts. Snowflakes clung to the shoulders of his deep ebony coat, and his dark hair held droplets that sparkled in the lamplight. His presence filled the space swiftly, not with noise, but with gravity, as though the air shifted to make room for him. He brushed a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. Only then did he meet her gaze. "Stella!" Her heart gave a small, involuntary flutter. "You went out?" she asked, startled. The storm had only grown worse in the past hour. He nodded, his voice low. "I met with Elliot. The board is tense, but that is not what matters now." She frowned, searching his expression. "Then what does?" For a brief moment he hesitated, and that alone stole her breath. Asher Whitaker did not hesitate. He calculated. He assessed. But hesitation, that meant something had shaken him. He crossed the room until he was only a breath away from her. She felt the heat radiating from him, the subtle shift in the air that always happened when their bodies came close. "Someone tried to follow you earlier," he said quietly. "Outside the ballroom." Her stomach clenched. "Follow me?" He nodded. It was subtle, but Dana caught him before he got close. Stella's hand flew to her mouth. "Grant, I do not know," he admitted, "but whoever it was did not approach you. You were never in danger." "But I could have been," she whispered. Asher reached out instinctively, cupping her elbow with a gentle but firm touch. His thumb brushed a soothing circle through the fabric of her sleeve, an unspoken reassurance. "You are safe now," he murmured. "I promise you that." Her pulse raced beneath her skin. "This is my fault," she said softly. "I brought chaos into your life, into your business, into everything." Asher's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. "Do not say that again." She blinked at the quiet intensity of his tone. "You did nothing wrong," he continued. "Nothing. You were hurt, manipulated, cornered. Anyone would have run." "Not everyone runs into a stranger's car," she whispered, a tremor of humor and sorrow mixing in her voice. His lips curved into a faint, tender smile. "You did not run into a stranger, Stella." His voice deepened. "Not anymore." Her breath caught. He stepped closer, as if pulled by a force he no longer wished to fight. "You are not chaos," he said. "You are courage." The words hit her harder than she expected. Her lips trembled. "I do not feel courageous." "You do not have to feel it," he murmured. "You are it." Her eyes glistened as she looked up at him. "Asher, I am so tired of being afraid." The vulnerability in her voice unraveled something inside him. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. His hand cupped her cheek with the gentlest pressure, his thumb brushing beneath her eye. "I know," he whispered. "I know." The storm outside howled, rattling the glass. Stella leaned into his hand, closing her eyes for a moment. Then, as if drawn by instinct, she placed her hand against his chest. The warmth of him, the solidity, grounded her. She felt the faint rise and fall of his breath beneath her palm. "Elliot said something tonight," he murmured. She opened her eyes. "He said the board is losing patience. They want me to distance myself from you." The words sliced through her. She pulled her hand back. "Asher, I cannot let you lose anything because of me." He took her hand again before she could step away, holding it firmly between both of his. "Stella, listen to me." Her breath trembled. "I will not let anyone dictate whom I stand beside. Not the board, not the media, not your fiancé." She swallowed hard. "Grant is not my fiancé." The softness that touched Asher's eyes made her knees weak. "No," he said, "he is not." She felt heat rise to her cheeks, but then her gaze dropped, her voice small. "Still, I do not want to be the reason you lose anything." Asher lifted her chin with his fingers, tilting her face toward his. "You are not a loss." Her chest tightened. "Then what am I?" He brushed his thumb across her cheek with reverence, his voice low. "Someone worth protecting." Her heart thudded so loudly she feared he could hear it. "Asher." His eyes flicked to her lips, then back to her eyes. "Stella," he whispered, "look at me." She did. "You deserve to be safe, to be heard, to be seen, to be free." His voice deepened with emotion. "And I want to be the man who stands with you as you reclaim all of that." Her breath trembled, a soft sound of longing slipping from her lips. She leaned closer without thinking. But before she could speak, the storm outside intensified, lightning crackling across the sky. The power flickered for a moment, shadows sliding over Asher's face. And then, as if fate sought to remind them of danger, Dana burst through the door, snow clinging to her coat. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, slightly breathless, "we have a problem." Asher straightened, his hand reluctantly releasing Stella's. "Dana, what is it?" Dana's eyes moved between them, with understanding but no judgment. She composed herself. "Grant's private investigator has been spotted outside the building. He is asking employees questions, trying to confirm Stella's presence." Stella felt the air leave her lungs. Asher's voice dropped to a cold, controlled tone she had never heard from him before. "Has anyone spoken to him?" "No," Dana said, "but he is persistent." Stella's fingers trembled. "I cannot do this," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I cannot live like a hunted animal." Asher moved instantly, placing both hands on her shoulders, steady and warm. "Stella, look at me." She lifted her tear-filled eyes. "You are not hunted," he said, each word slow and firm. "You are surrounded by people who will protect you." Tears spilled over her cheeks. "I do not want protection," she cried softly. "I want my life back." Asher pulled her into his arms before she could crumble, wrapping her in a warmth that melted the storm's chill. She pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the deep scent of cedar and something unmistakably him. His hand slid up her back in slow, comforting strokes. "I know," he murmured against her hair. "I know." She clung to him, gripping the fabric of his shirt, as though he were the only solid thing left in her world. After a moment, she pulled back slightly, her hands still resting against his chest. His gaze searched her face, tender and fierce, all at once. "Stella," he whispered, brushing her hair behind her ear with delicate fingers. "Do not apologize for wanting your life." Her voice was fragile. "I feel broken." He shook his head, lifting her chin. "You are not broken." She met his gaze, her breath catching at the depth she saw there. "You are bruised," he whispered, "but you are unbroken." Her lips parted, a soft sound of emotion slipping out. "And I will stay with you," he added, "for as long as you allow me." Her heart pounded. "Why?" she breathed. He moved closer until their foreheads touched, his voice a warm whisper. "Because when I look at you, I see a woman worth fighting for." Her eyes closed, tears sliding down her cheeks. His hand traced her jaw with exquisite tenderness, his thumb brushing her lower lip for the briefest moment. The touch left her trembling. "Asher," she whispered, her breath warm against his skin. "Stella," he answered, his voice breaking slightly with feeling. She lifted her hand, resting her palm against his cheek. He leaned into her touch with a soft exhale, his eyes half closing. "This feels dangerous," she whispered. "So does breathing in a storm," he murmured, "and you are still here." Warmth flooded through her, rich and overwhelming. A sudden sharp gust of wind slammed against the window, drawing them back to reality. Stella stepped away, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I am sorry," she said softly. "For what?" Asher asked. "For falling apart." He shook his head. "You are not falling apart. You are trying to hold too much alone." She looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and sorrow in her eyes. "What do I do now?" "For tonight," he said gently, "you rest. You breathe. You let me and Dana handle everything else." "And tomorrow," she whispered. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering. "Tomorrow will come when it comes." She nodded slowly, exhaustion settling in her bones. Asher stepped away reluctantly, though his gaze never left her. "Dana will stay at the door," he said. "No one is getting near you." Stella nodded again. Asher hesitated at the threshold of the bedroom hallway. "Stella," he said softly. She looked up. "You are not alone," he murmured. Her voice trembled. "I know." He gave her a look so tender, so unguarded, that it warmed her through more deeply than any fire could. Then he stepped back, giving her space, though the air between them pulsed with everything unspoken. Stella watched him go, feeling the ache of distance and the comfort of his promise intertwine within her like threads of light and shadow. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, something fragile and beautiful continued to grow in the quiet between two hearts, learning how to trust again. The storm had quieted by morning, but its echo clung to the city like a lingering sigh. Chicago lay blanketed beneath soft layers of white, the rooftops crowned with sparkling frost, the streets muffled into near silence. The secure suite stood warm against the cold, the windows glowing with pale winter sunlight. Inside, Stella Bennet sat on the edge of the sofa, wrapped in one of Asher's dark wool blankets, her bare feet tucked beneath her. She looked fragile and strong all at once, her hair falling freely over her shoulders like a spill of soft waves. A knock sounded at the door. Before she had time to react, the door opened and Asher Whittaker stepped in. His coat was dusted with melting snow, and the wind had roughed his hair in a way that made him look devastatingly human, not the untouchable billionaire the world believed him to be. His shoulders were tense, but when his eyes landed on Stella, the hardness softened. "You are awake," he said gently. She nodded. "I did not sleep much." He removed his coat and set it aside, moving closer with slow, deliberate steps. "I know." She watched him, noticing the fatigue beneath his eyes, the strain tugging at his posture. "You did not sleep either." He gave a faint smile. "No." The blanket slipped slightly from her shoulder, and Asher reached instinctively to adjust it, draping it back into place with the kind of tenderness that made Stella's breath shiver. His fingers brushed her collarbone as he withdrew, and the small contact sent a warm ache through her. "Stella," he began, voice careful, "there is something I need to tell you." Her heart tightened. "What is it?" He sat beside her, not too close, but close enough that the space between them felt charged. "Your fiancé's private investigator attempted to enter this hotel last night." Stella's breath hitched. "What?" "He tried to bribe an employee," Asher said. "Dana stopped him. He was removed." Her hands trembled beneath the blanket. "So he really is trying to take me?" "No," Asher said firmly. "He is trying to find you. There is a difference, and he will not succeed." She looked at him, fear pooling behind her eyes. "How can you be so sure?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Because you are here with me. Because my team is here. Because I will not let anything happen to you." She felt tears prick her eyes, soft but stubborn. "Why are you doing this, Asher?" He inhaled slowly, as though he had been holding the truth inside for hours. "Because I care." The words fell between them like fresh snow, soft but heavy with meaning. Her breath trembled. "You barely know me." "I know enough," he said, eyes locked on hers. "I know the way you held your breath every time someone looked at you at the gala. I know the way your hands shake when you're scared, even when your voice stays calm. I know you left a life where you were silenced, and you are still learning to speak again. And I know that when you look at me, it feels like something inside both of us understands." Stella's lips parted, emotion swelling in her chest. "Asher." He reached for her hand, taking it between both of his, warming her fingers with slow, deliberate strokes. "You do not owe me anything," he murmured. "But I need you to know why I am here." She squeezed his hand weakly. "Say it." His eyes softened into molten warmth. "I am here because you matter to me, because you deserve safety, because when you walked into my life, everything shifted." She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. "I do not know how to handle this." "You do not need to handle anything alone," he said, brushing his thumb over her hand. Silence followed, deep and intimate, the kind that wrapped around them like a living heartbeat. But then Stella shook her head slightly, her eyes downcast. "Asher, the world is already turning against me. You saw the posts. You saw how quickly they called me unstable. If you stand beside me, they will come after you too." He lifted her chin, making her look at him. "Let them try." She blinked, startled. "You cannot risk everything for me." His gaze deepened. "Some things are worth the risk." Her breath stilled. He stroked her jaw gently, his fingertips drawing warmth along her skin. "You are worth the risk." Her chest tightened painfully at the sincerity in his voice. "Asher," she whispered, "I do not want to be another burden in your life. You carry enough. You are not a burden." His tone was firm, unwavering. "You are a choice." He moved closer, close enough that she felt the heat of him even through the blanket. "And I am choosing you, Stella." The words left her trembling. Her eyes dropped to their joined hands. "I do not know if I can give you anything back." His voice grew quiet, tender, almost reverent. "You already have." Her heart fluttered painfully. "What have I given you?" He leaned forward, his forehead almost brushing hers. "Your trust." The nearness of him set her pulse racing. She closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of his words, the warmth of his breath, the promise in his touch. Then she whispered, "I am afraid." "I know," he murmured. "And I am drawn to you," she confessed, her voice barely audible. "More than I should be." She felt him stiffen slightly, as though the confession struck something deep inside him. He gently tilted her face toward his. "Stella, look at me." She did. His eyes held hers with a tenderness that made her knees weak. "There is no wrong way to feel," he said softly. "Not now, not with what you have survived." She trembled. "But this feels dangerous." His hand slid to the side of her neck, warm and steady. "Everything worth feeling is." Her breath caught. She could feel the pull between them intensify, heavy and sweet. She glanced down at his lips. His breath deepened. "Stella," he whispered, "do not look at me like that unless you want me closer." Her cheeks warmed, but she did not look away. "Maybe I do." He inhaled sharply, eyes darkening with emotion. "Say it again." She wet her lips nervously. "Maybe I want you closer." A soft, shattered sound escaped him, so quiet she might have imagined it. His hand slid to her waist, fingers brushing the blanket. "You cannot say things like that," he murmured, "and expect me to remain calm." She trembled. "I'm not used to wanting anything." "Then let me be the first thing you want without fear." Her eyes glistened. "What if wanting you hurts me?" His voice dropped to a whisper, rich with truth. "I would never hurt you." Her breath trembled. "What if it hurts you?" He smiled faintly, brushing his forehead against hers. "Then I will heal." The intimate gesture stole her breath. He exhaled, his voice a soft confession. "Stella, you have no idea what you're doing to me." She leaned closer, her lips inches from his. "Then show me." A knock shattered the moment. Both froze. Dana's voice carried from the other side of the door. "Mr. Whitaker, it is urgent." Asher stepped back, breathing uneven, running a hand through his hair as if physically restraining himself. Stella clutched the blanket tighter, her pulse pounding. He opened the door, and Dana stepped in with a tablet in hand. "Grant's legal team filed a new claim," Dana said. "They are pushing for emergency custody of Stella's assets." Stella staggered back. "Custody of my assets? What does that even mean?" Dana continued. They are arguing that you are mentally unfit to manage your finances after fleeing the wedding. Stella's knees weakened. Asher caught her elbow, steadying her. His touch burned with protectiveness. "He is twisting everything," Stella whispered. "Everything." Asher's jaw hardened. "He is desperate. He is losing control." Dana nodded. "Mariah is already preparing a counterfile. But Stella needs to make a statement today." Stella's breath broke. "I cannot face the world today." Asher brushed his hand down her arm. "You do not have to face the world, only the truth." Her eyes filled with tears. "Asher, I am tired. I know." He pulled her gently into his arms. "Let me carry some of it." She closed her eyes, leaning against him, feeling the safety of his embrace, the solid beat of his heart beneath her cheek. Dana stepped aside respectfully. "I will wait outside." When the door closed again, Stella lifted her head slightly. "I do not want to fall apart in front of everyone." "You will not fall apart," Asher said softly. "You will speak. You will stand. And I will be beside you." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with something between hope and heartbreak. "Do you mean that?" His thumb brushed her cheek with quiet reverence. "Every word." Emotion swelled in her chest, stealing her breath. "Asher," she murmured. His hand slid to her waist again, drawing her closer. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the tension thrumming beneath his restraint. "Stella," he whispered, his eyes flicking to her lips once more. "I need you to know something." "What?" she breathed, his voice deepened, trembling with truth. "I am falling for you." Her heart stopped. She blinked, stunned. "Asher." "I know it is too soon," he whispered, "and I know your heart is bruised, but I cannot pretend I do not feel this." Her breath shook. "Why tell me now?" "Because you deserve honesty," he said, "even when it scares me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You scare me too." He smiled sadly. "Good." She blinked. "Good?" "Yes," he murmured, touching her cheek, "because it means you feel something." Her chest tightened, overflowing with emotions too big to name. She lifted her hand, resting it against his heart. His breath stilled. "Asher," she whispered, "I do feel something." He closed his eyes, exhaling softly. "Do not say it unless it is true." "It is true." His eyes snapped open, filled with warmth so deep she felt it wrap around her like a second heartbeat. "Stella," he breathed, "you have no idea what that does to me." He leaned closer, not kissing her, but coming close enough that she felt the sweetness of almost. Her lips parted. His voice brushed her mouth like a promise. "When this is over, I will not hold back." Her breath trembled. "Then do not hold back now." "Not until you are free," he whispered. "Not until you choose me without fear." She touched his cheek, her thumb tracing the line of his jaw. "I am choosing you now." A soft, broken sound escaped him. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into the warmest, safest embrace she had ever known. She melted into him, her forehead resting against his neck, his breath warm against her ear. "Stella," he whispered, "I will fight for you." "And I for myself," she whispered back. "And we together," he said, his voice a vow. The snow outside continued to fall gently, blanketing the world in white. But inside the suite, something new was blooming. Not fear, not silence, not uncertainty. Something bright, something fierce, something that felt dangerously, beautifully like love. Chicago woke beneath a sky the color of pearl, the storm finally spent. Snow lay over the city in clean, luminous sheets, softening the edges of steel and glass, as if winter itself had decided to grant mercy. From the secure suite, the world looked quiet, almost innocent. But inside, Stella Bennet felt the opposite of quiet. She stood near the window in a simple, fitted sweater and dark trousers, her hair loose and brushed smooth, her face bare of anything that could be called a mask. She looked real. She looked like herself. The woman who had once measured every word, every breath, every smile to keep the peace was gone. In her place stood someone with trembling hands and steady eyes. Behind her, Asher Whittaker moved through the room with the calm precision of a man preparing for war without raising his voice. He had exchanged his suit for a dark knit and tailored trousers, modern and understated, yet he still carried that unmistakable gravity. He set a glass of water on the table beside her and paused, watching her as if she were the only truth in the world. "You don't have to do this alone," he said softly. Stella's throat tightened. She turned to him slowly, and the moment her eyes met his, she felt it again. That pull, that warmth, that unsettling certainty that had grown between them like an unspoken vow. "I'm not doing it alone," she replied. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake. "I'm doing it with my own name." Asher's gaze softened, something proud and tender flickering in his expression. He lifted his hand, hesitated for the briefest heartbeat, then brushed his knuckles along her cheek with a reverence that made her chest ache. "That's the Stella I see," he murmured. A knock sounded at the door. Dana entered first, composed as ever, her posture alert, her eyes scanning. Behind her came Mariah Klein, carrying a slim folder and a look that held both gravity and satisfaction. "Good morning," Mariah said, stepping into the warm light. "I have what we need." Stella's breath caught. She moved forward instinctively, and Asher's hand settled lightly at her back, steadying her without claiming her. Mariah opened the folder on the table and laid out printed pages with careful, deliberate order. Not chaos, not emotion, evidence. Stella recognized the language immediately. Legal phrasing, clinical and cold. The same kind of words that had haunted her since the night she ran. Mariah tapped the first page. "This is the drafted guardianship motion. It was created before the wedding weekend. It lists instability as justification for transferring authority. It is premeditated." Stella's fingers curled, but she kept her gaze steady. Mariah turned the page. "These are internal messages between Grant's legal consultant and his private investigator. The investigator reports visual confirmation attempts and employee leverage. It establishes that he attempted to locate you through questionable means." Stella's stomach twisted, but she did not look away. Then Mariah slid one final sheet forward, and Stella felt her breath stop. An email. From Grant Mercer, not charming, not flattering, not sweet. Cold. The words were there in black and white, unmistakable in their intent. Grant described the marriage as an asset containment solution and referenced a planned wellness intervention if Stella showed resistance. He wrote about her like a problem to be managed, not a woman to be loved. Stella's vision blurred. Her hands trembled as she reached for the paper, and Asher's fingers closed gently over her wrist, anchoring her without stopping her. "Read it," Mariah said quietly, "when you are ready." Stella swallowed hard and forced herself to scan the lines again, slower, letting the truth carve itself into something permanent inside her. The pain was sharp, but there was also clarity, bright, brutal clarity. She set the page down with trembling care. "I wasn't imagining it," she whispered. Mariah's voice was firm but kind. "No, you were being prepared for control." Stella's chest rose with a long breath, and when she looked up, her eyes were wet but unwavering. "What happens now?" Mariah closed the folder gently. "Now we do two things. First, we file our response to the emergency asset petition. Second, Stella makes a statement. Not emotional, not reactive, clear, measured, yours." Stella nodded slowly. "Today." "Yes," Mariah said. While the narrative is still shifting, Dana spoke from near the door, calm as steel. Press is already gathering downstairs. Someone leaked that Stella might speak. Stella's pulse quickened, but she did not retreat. She looked at Eyre, and he looked back as if he had been waiting for this moment to arrive. "You don't have to be perfect," he said softly. "You only have to be true." She exhaled shakily. Truth is terrifying. Eyre's hand moved to her elbow, warm through fabric. "So is freedom," he murmured. "And you are choosing it anyway." Mariah checked her phone once, then lifted her gaze. "We have a short window. If you are ready, we go now." Stella looked down for a brief moment, then lifted her chin. "I'm ready." Eyre's breath deepened, as if the words struck him somewhere beneath the ribs. "Then I'm with you." Stella's eyes held his. "Not as my shield," she said quietly. "As my witness." A soft, almost broken smile touched Eyre's lips. "As your witness," he agreed. They moved through the private corridor with Dana ahead and Mariah beside them. The hotel's discreet elevator carried them down, silent and smooth, and Stella felt every heartbeat as if it were echoing against the walls. She kept her hands clasped tightly, not to hide trembling, but to hold herself together with intention. Eyre stood close, not touching her, but present in a way that felt like warmth beside a winter window. When the elevator doors opened, sound rushed in. Camera shutters, murmurs, the low hum of a crowd hungry for drama. They stepped into a small conference space that had been arranged with precision. Neutral backdrop, soft lighting, microphones at the front. There were journalists, hotel staff, a few guests who had lingered after the charity weekend, and security placed subtly like punctuation. Stella's breath caught. Then Eyre shifted slightly, just enough for her to feel his shoulder near hers. He leaned down, his voice a private murmur. "Breathe," he said. "One breath, then another." She did. Mariah took her position at the side. Dana's eyes scanned the room. Eyre stood beside Stella, not looming, not dominating. Just there. Stella stepped up to the microphone. The room quieted as if the air itself had been commanded. She looked out at the faces, curious, skeptical, eager. For one frightening second she felt the old reflex return, to soften, to apologize, to make herself smaller to keep the peace. Then she remembered the email on the table upstairs, and something inside her hardened into dignity. "My name is Stella Bennett," she said. Her voice carried clearly, stronger than she expected. "I am speaking today because I refuse to allow anyone to define my sanity, my intentions, or my worth." A ripple moved through the crowd. Stella continued, each word carefully chosen. "I left my wedding weekend voluntarily. I did not take property. I did not disappear in confusion. I made a decision for my safety and autonomy." The flash of cameras brightened the room. She did not flinch. "There are legal documents prepared before the wedding that attempt to transfer control of my finances and medical decisions under claims of instability. Those documents were not created out of concern. They were created out of control." A murmur rose, sharper now. Stella's hands trembled slightly near the podium, but her voice did not. "I am represented by counsel. I am cooperating with appropriate channels. And I ask for privacy not because I am ashamed, but because I am healing." For a second she paused. Her gaze drifted to Eyre. He was watching her like she was sunlight. Stella turned back to the room. "I will not be coerced into silence, and I will not return to a situation that required me to surrender myself to be considered loved." Her throat tightened, but she swallowed it down. "This is my statement. Thank you." The room erupted in overlapping questions. "Stella, are you saying Grant Mercer abused you? Were you kidnapped? Mr. Whitaker, did you take advantage of her?" The noise pressed in. Eyre stepped closer, his hand hovering near Stella's back, never touching, but ready. Maria lifted a hand with quiet authority. "No questions today," Maria said firmly. This was a statement. But then the room shifted, a commotion near the entrance. Stella's heart lurched. Grant Mercer appeared in the doorway, flanked by his own legal representative, his expression perfectly composed for cameras. His smile was careful, concerned, crafted. "Stella," he called out gently, as if speaking to a distressed loved one. "Please, this isn't you. Let's talk privately." The air turned sharp. Stella's body went cold for half a heartbeat. Then she heard Asher's voice, low, lethal in its calm. "Stop." Grant's smile tightened. "Asher, I'm trying to help her. She's clearly overwhelmed." Stella felt a surge of rage rise like heat beneath her skin. She stepped forward, her eyes locking with Grant's. "Don't," she said, her voice quiet but cutting. "Don't perform concern. Not in front of me." Grant blinked, the polished mask flickering. Asher's stance shifted. Not aggressive, not dramatic. Protective. A wall without a shove. "She has spoken," he said. "Leave." Grant's gaze sharpened, anger flashing behind the charm. "You have no idea what you're doing," he hissed under his breath, just loud enough to be heard. Stella's lips curved into a small, devastating smile. "Oh, Grant," she said softly. "I finally do." Before Grant could respond, 2 uniformed officers stepped in behind him. The room held its breath. One of the officers spoke with professional neutrality. "Grant Mercer?" Grant turned, startled. "Yes. What is this?" "You are being served with an emergency protective order," the officer said, holding out documents. "You are instructed to cease contact attempts and third-party inquiries. Any violation will result in legal action." Grant's face drained of color, then flushed with fury. His gaze swung back to Stella, searching for the old weakness, the old fear. He found none. Stella stood tall, her shoulders squared, her chin lifted. Grant's jaw clenched. He opened his mouth, but no charming words came. There was nothing he could say that could put the truth back into hiding. He snatched the papers and backed out, his expression shattered by the first public consequence of his private cruelty. As the door closed behind him, the tension in the room broke like a snapped thread. Stella's knees trembled. Asher moved closer immediately, his hand settling at her back with the gentlest pressure. Just enough to keep her standing, just enough to remind her she was not alone. "You did it," he murmured. Stella stared forward, breath shaking. "I didn't fall." "No," Asher whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You rose." Maria guided them out through a private exit, Dana clearing the path with quiet efficiency. The hallway beyond the conference space felt like an exhale, soft, muted, safe. Stella's heartbeat thundered in her ears, and the moment the elevator doors closed, she finally let the air leave her lungs in a trembling breath. Her hands flew to her face, not to hide tears, but to hold the reality of what she had just done. Asher's fingers wrapped around her wrists gently and lowered her hands. "Look at me," he said. Stella lifted her eyes. His gaze was unguarded now, raw with pride, and something deeper, something that made her chest ache. "I've seen powerful rooms," he murmured. "I've seen men with money and influence bend the world, but what you did just now, that was real power." Stella's breath broke. "I was terrified." "I know," he whispered. "And you spoke anyway." The elevator opened onto the secure floor. They stepped into the suite, and the warmth of the room enveloped them. For a moment, Stella stood still, as if unsure what to do with the quiet, now that she had fought so loudly. Asher turned to her, slowly, as though approaching something sacred. "You said you didn't want me as your shield," he murmured. "You wanted me as your witness." Stella nodded, her eyes shining. He took her hands in his, lifting them gently. "Then let me witness this too," he said softly. "The moment you realize you're free." Stella's throat tightened. "Am I?" Ash's thumb brushed her knuckles in a slow caress. "Yes. Not because the world suddenly became kind, but because you refused to be owned." Stella closed her eyes as tears slid down her cheeks, warm against cold memory. "I feel lighter," she whispered, "and exhausted." Asher stepped closer, their bodies inches apart, his voice a tender murmur. "Let me hold you." Stella opened her eyes. "No bargains," she whispered. "No debt." Asher's gaze softened. "No debt," he promised. She nodded once. Asher pulled her into his arms, not tight, not consuming, just firm enough to be safe. Stella melted into him, her forehead resting against his shoulder, her hands gripping his sweater as if anchoring herself to the reality that she had survived. Asher's hand moved slowly up her back, comforting, patient. "Stella," he whispered against her hair, "you are not a headline to me." She pulled back slightly, looking up at him with wet lashes. "What am I to you?" Asher's breath shook in a way she had never heard from him. He lifted a hand to her cheek, his thumb tracing the curve with reverent care. "You are the woman who changed the way I breathe," he murmured. "You are the truth I didn't know I was starving for." Stella's lips trembled. "Asher!" He leaned in, close enough that their breath mingled, but he paused, eyes searching hers with unmistakable respect. "Tell me," he whispered, "tell me you choose me without fear." Stella's heart pounded, but her voice came steady, clear. "I choose you," she said, "not because I need hiding, because I want love that doesn't demand my silence." Asher's eyes closed for a brief moment, as if the words struck him like prayer. Then he kissed her. It was not rushed. It was not desperate. It was slow and profound, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise kept after a lifetime of waiting. His hand cradled her jaw, his touch gentle, controlled, filled with reverence. Stella's fingers slid into his hair, holding him close, not to claim him, but to meet him. When they finally parted, Stella's breath trembled against his lips. Asher rested his forehead against hers. "You are free," he whispered again. Stella smiled through tears, a soft, luminous smile that belonged only to her. "And I'm loved," she whispered back. Asher's arms tightened slightly around her, warm and steady, and outside the window snow continued to fall in slow, quiet spirals, soft as blessings over a city that would keep turning. But inside that suite, Stella's life had finally turned toward the light. Winter had returned to Chicago, but the city no longer felt like the place where fear once shadowed every step of Stella Bennett's life. Snowflakes drifted gently over the skyline, settling like soft memories on the balconies and terraces of River North, where the world carried on with its usual rhythm of lights, traffic, and distant music. Inside, a penthouse bathed in warm golden light, laughter echoed. Stella, now Stella Whitaker, stood near the kitchen island, her dark hair pulled into a loose braid, a soft sweater hugging her figure. She held a steaming mug of tea between her hands, smiling at the scene unfolding in the living room. 2 children, a boy of 6 with Asher's deep brown eyes and a girl of 4 with Stella's impossible dimples, were sprawled across the carpet, building a city out of blocks and sheer imagination. "Daddy, it needs more towers," the girl announced. "Towers," Asher replied solemnly, lowering himself to the floor with exaggerated effort. "Coming right up, princess." He was older now, his hair marked with faint threads of silver, his gaze more thoughtful. But when he looked at Stella, he still looked like the man who once held her trembling hands and whispered that she could rise. His love had not softened with age. It had deepened, rooted itself into every year they had lived together. Stella watched him with a smile that held 8 years of triumph, healing, and quiet miracles. Their marriage had not been a fairy tale. It had been real, filled with court dates, press statements, sleepless nights, and long conversations in low lamplight about how to build a life not from fear, but from choice. But it had been the greatest adventure she had ever known. She stepped into the living room, placing her tea aside. "Your towers are leaning," she teased gently. Eyre looked up at her with a grin that still made her heart flip. "The architect insisted on creative freedom," he said, gesturing toward their son, who was frowning seriously at a crooked stack of blocks. Stella knelt beside them, smoothing her daughter's hair behind her ear. "Creative freedom," she repeated softly. "A very powerful thing." Eyre's gaze flicked to her, and in it she saw every moment they'd fought for, the freedom to love, to breathe, to live without permission. Outside, the snow fell thicker, coating the balcony in a white hush. Grant Mercer had not fared as well. His downfall had come slowly at first, then all at once. Financial investigations had uncovered years of unethical dealings. Investors withdrew. Partners resigned. The world he built on manipulation crumbled beneath him, not from revenge, but from truth finally given the space to breathe. He lived now in quiet obscurity, far from the spotlight he once craved, a man paying the price of believing he could own another soul. Stella rarely thought of him anymore. But when she did, it was without fear, only closure. Society had changed too. Conversations about emotional manipulation, control, and psychological abuse had grown louder. Stella's statement all those years ago had become one of the early sparks that ignited a broader cultural shift. She never sought fame, but she became a quiet advocate, her voice measured, her heart always steady. People listened, not because she shouted, but because she survived. Her work with shelters, legal reform initiatives, and education programs had helped countless women reclaim their names and futures. And every time she gave a speech, Eyre stood somewhere in the room, not in front of her, not behind her, but beside her. Their children loved to attend her events, though still too young to understand the magnitude of their mother's courage. They simply knew she helped people, and that their father looked at her with a kind of awe reserved only for her. The fire in the fireplace crackled softly now, bathing the room in golden warmth. Eyre rose from the floor, brushing off his hands, and crossed towards Stella. "You're quiet," he murmured, sliding an arm around her waist. She leaned into him easily, naturally. "Just thinking." "About?" he asked, though his tone carried the fondness of a man who already knew. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the flames. "About how, 8 years ago, I was afraid to even breathe." Eyre cupped her cheek gently. "And now," she smiled, leaning into his touch, "now I breathe freely, and I love freely." He kissed her forehead, a soft touch full of nostalgia and devotion. "And I still thank whatever fate put you in my car that night." Stella laughed softly. "Your Lamborghini will forever be part of our story." "Best investment I ever made," he whispered, brushing his lips along her temple. She swatted his shoulder playfully, and he caught her hand, intertwining their fingers. Their children, oblivious to the romance unfolding above their heads, squealed as a tower collapsed dramatically. "Mom! Dad! It fell again!" Eyre and Stella walked back to them hand in hand, sinking to the floor beside the small world their children had built. Stella wrapped an arm around her daughter, who cuddled into her warmth, while their son climbed onto Eyre's lap, already demanding help rebuilding. Eyre looked over their children's heads at Stella, his eyes soft. She returned the look, her heart full. 8 years, 2 children. A love that had weathered storms, courtrooms, headlines, and healing. They had built a home not from fear, but from choice. Not from survival, but from joy. The snow fell quietly outside, settling over Chicago like a blessing. And inside, amidst laughter, warmth, and the gentle weight of the two small lives they had created, Stella knew, with absolute certainty, she had chosen right. She had chosen love. She had chosen herself. And 8 years later, her heart was exactly where it belonged. Stories like Stella and Ashes remind us that the journey toward reclaiming one's voice is rarely straight, never easy, and often painful, yet they also show us that strength grows in the quietest moments. Power returns in the smallest choices. And healing begins the instant we decide that our story deserves to be rewritten, not erased. Stella learned that freedom does not come from running away, but from finally standing still and saying, enough. Asher discovered that love is not rescue, but partnership. And together, they proved that the heart can bloom again, even after being taught to fear its own beat. Their story invites each of us to reflect. How many times have we silenced our truth to protect someone else's comfort? How often have we underestimated the courage inside us simply because someone once taught us to doubt it? If this story touched you, if you followed Stella's rise from fear to freedom, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, what moved you the most? What did this story help you see differently? And if you watched until the end, write the word unbreakable in the comments so I know you were here for the full journey. It helps this channel grow, and it helps more stories like this reach the people who need them. For those who feel called to support the small team that works tirelessly to bring these narratives to life, you may send a super thanks in whatever amount feels right for you. Every gesture, big or small, helps us continue creating stories that resonate deeply. And if you cannot support financially, sharing this story with a friend or family member is another wonderful way to help. Sometimes a single shared story finds its way to the person who needs it most. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for believing that stories have the power to heal, to inspire, and to remind us that no one is truly alone.